It was supposed to be a weekend of solemn remembrance, a moment when even the most distracted corners of Britain paused to honour the fallen. The king was in London, standing before the cenotaph, head bowed beneath a grey November sky. Across the Commonwealth, veterans polished their medals, families laid poppies on headstones, and silence rippled across continents. But 5,000 miles away, under the glitter of Beverly Hills chandeliers, something very different was happening. While Britain mourned, Meghan Markle was posing under a chandelier, shaped like a martini glass. At first, it sounded like another exaggerated tabloid headline. The Duchess at a Kardashian party. But when the footage surfaced, there was no denying it. There she was, dressed in glossy black, arm-linked with Prince Harry, smiling as if the cameras were her oxygen. The event, Kris Jenner's 70th birthday bash. A spectacle so drenched in excess that even James Bond might have blushed. Every corner sparkled with wealth. Guests sipped gold-leaf champagne. Invitations came with security codes, and paparazzi flashes lit the night like lightning. And into that glimmering circus, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex made their entrance. Observers say the atmosphere changed the second they walked in. One guest whispered that it was like a movie cut to a new scene. The chatter dimmed, cameras turned, and for a few strange seconds, the spotlight abandoned Kris Jenner, the woman who invented fame itself, and landed squarely on Meghan Markle. Not for her elegance, not even for her title, but for the audacity of appearing there at all. Because this wasn't just any night. Back in London, Remembrance Day ceremonies were unfolding. A sacred tradition that had once defined Harry's sense of duty, a former soldier who'd worn the uniform with pride, now seen under disco lights wearing a poppy, like an accessory. It was symbolism so heavy, it almost collapsed under its own irony. Commentators didn't have to reach for metaphors. They just had to describe the scene. On social media, the split screen told the story better than any journalist could. On one side, Catherine, Princess of Wales, in a black coat and fascinator, eyes cast down in silence. On the other, Meghan, grinning for flashbulbs, poppy pinned to sequins, a cocktail in hand. It was the kind of image that needed no caption. The internet called it remembrance versus relevance. But to those who've studied Meghan's public playbook, the night was anything but accidental. Every appearance, every coincidental photo, every smile that lands at just the right camera angle. It's all choreography. She doesn't stumble into attention. She manufactures it. And this birthday party was her latest production. Insiders claim that Meghan's team had worked weeks to secure that invite. Or perhaps, to create the impression of one, Kris Jenner's party was the hottest ticket in Los Angeles, a Bond-themed extravaganza attended by tech moguls, fashion icons, and reality queens. To appear there meant one thing: you still mattered. For Meghan, whose Hollywood glow had started to flicker since the end of the Netflix hype, this was oxygen. When she entered, everything about her demeanor screamed performance. The chin tilt calibrated to catch the chandelier light. The deliberate pause in front of photographers. The hand resting just long enough on Harry's sleeve to appear affectionate. But behind that polish was something raw. Hunger. This wasn't about celebration. It was about resurrection. Meghan wasn't at a party. She was at an audition. For relevance. For status. For survival in a city that forgets quickly. Meanwhile, Harry followed, visibly uncomfortable. The former soldier, once defined by purpose and principle, now stood as a silent +1 to a spectacle he barely seemed to believe in. Guests noticed. One recalled him, looking like a man trapped inside his own press release. Another described him as a ghost haunting his own reputation. The cameras loved Meghan. They barely noticed Harry. As the night unfolded, the online reaction was merciless. From the battlefield to the buffet table, One viral caption sneered beneath their photos. Another wrote, "The Duchess of Disrespect." Memes flooded the timeline. Harry in uniform beside Harry, under chandeliers. The soldier turned socialite. But perhaps the most cutting critique came from a British veteran who tweeted, "We wore poppies to honor sacrifice. They wore them to accessorize. And yet this outrage, this noise, may have been exactly what Meghan wanted. Because outrage trends, silence doesn't. In the media game she's mastered, attention is currency, and scandal is just another form of investment. Every headline, even the cruel ones, keeps her name glowing in pixels. Still, not everyone in Hollywood was impressed. Inside the venue, the reaction was reportedly frosty. The Kardashians offered polite smiles, but quickly moved on. Jeff Bezos nodded once, then turned back to his drink. Kris Jenner, who'd built her empire by reading rooms like weather patterns, wore a PR smile. Tight, gracious, but unmistakably strained. The kind that says, "Fine, steal my spotlight, but make it worth it." By midnight, whispers began to ripple through the crowd. Some guests wondered aloud if Meghan had even been officially invited. Others claimed her team had coordinated her attendance through a friend of a friend. Whatever the truth, one thing was certain. She made her entrance count. The outfit itself sparked debate. A black wrap ensemble, somewhere between red carpet and experimental art project. Some called it bold, others bargain bin couture. But what drew the sharpest criticism wasn't the dress. It was the tan. Under the ballroom lights, Meghan's skin glowed an unnaturally warm shade that online commentators swiftly christened Bond villain bronze. Combined with the misplaced poppy on her lapel, it became an instant meme. Funeral chic meets Halloween tan, one user quipped. But beneath the ridicule lay a deeper discomfort. It wasn't just about fashion. It was about timing, tone, and meaning. The poppy isn't a costume prop. It's a national symbol of mourning and honor. To wear it at a Hollywood gala while veterans stood in cold silence an ocean away, that was more than tone deaf. It was sacrilege. Still, Meghan smiled through it. Every camera flash seemed to charge her confidence. Every criticism bounced off her like light off sequins. She survived worse storms and learned a cruel truth. When you can't control love, control attention. Harry, however, didn't share her composure. Photos from the event show him half smiling, eyes unfocused, shoulders hunched. To the casual viewer, he looked bored, but to anyone who'd followed his story, the soldier who spoke of trauma, the man who sought privacy in California, it looked like something else entirely. Regret. He'd traded the solemnity of duty for the glare of celebrity, and now even his poppy seemed to mock him. It was a quiet humiliation, one the tabloids didn't need to embellish. Every picture told the story. Meghan glowing in the foreground, Harry blurred in the back. The symbolism was brutal. In the kingdom of Hollywood, crowns don't command, they compete. And that night, Harry was just another background character in Meghan's endless bid for spotlight. The irony didn't go unnoticed. For years, the Sussexes had claimed they fled royal life to escape relentless media attention. Yet, here they were, in a room full of cameras, looking directly into the lens. Paparazzi didn't find them. They were invited. According to several reports, media outlets had been discreetly tipped off about their arrival right down to the minute. Coincidence? Not a chance. It was PR choreography. A stage-managed spectacle disguised as spontaneity. Even sympathetic journalists couldn't defend it. "You can't flee fame and then schedule it," wrote one columnist. "You can't preach privacy and then perform it." By the time the night was over, the damage was done. Online, their photos circulated beside headlines, comparing Meghan's glitter to Kate's grace, Harry's smirk to his father's solemnity. The contrast was devastating. Britain saw betrayal. Hollywood saw desperation, but the fallout didn't stop there. Kris Jenner's post-party Instagram carousel included 20 glossy photos, Bezos laughing, Kim adjusting her dress, even Snoop Dogg raising a toast. Conspicuously missing, Meghan and Harry, not a single frame. It was as if they'd never been there at all. The digital erasure spoke volumes. In Hollywood hierarchy, absence is the loudest form of rejection. Insiders later whispered that Meghan's attempt to charm the crowd fell flat. She flitted between groups, dropping names, flashing smiles, but the connections never stuck. "It felt transactional," said one attendee, like every laugh had a purpose. Harry, meanwhile, lingered near the bar, half present, half elsewhere. One witness recalled him watching Meghan work the room, like she was clocking in for a shift, and in a way, she was. Because for Meghan, every appearance is an audition, for influence, for partnership, for the next project. But that night, Hollywood wasn't casting. As the lights dimmed and the champagne lost its sparkle, the royal couple slipped out the back. The cameras caught them once more, but this time the energy had changed. Meghan's smile was tighter, Harry's eyes darker. The night had promised glamour and delivered irony. A modern fairy tale rewritten as farce. Back in London, the trumpets had already faded. The wreaths lay silent, the nation's grief folded neatly into history. And across the Atlantic, beneath Beverly Hills moonlight, the Sussexes had managed to turn remembrance into reality TV. What was supposed to be Kris Jenner's grand night of celebration ended as Meghan Markle's latest controversy. A glittering mistake that blurred the line between ambition and absurdity. But as the world laughed, Meghan's inner circle knew better. Every scandal, every outrage, every viral storm, all part of the same strategy. Because in the world she built, attention isn't the byproduct, it's the goal. Yet even in the glow of that strategy, one truth lingered: Harry's silence. Through the flashes, the laughter, and the polite applause, he never once looked like a man enjoying the show. Maybe he knew what others were too polite to say, that in chasing fame, they'd finally lost something neither title nor fortune could replace: respect. When Meghan and Harry stepped out of Kris Jenner's glittering mansion that night, the air outside felt different. The paparazzi bulbs still flashed, but they sounded harsher, less celebratory, more surgical. The crowd that once screamed their names now just murmured, uncertain whether to cheer or gawk. In those moments, as Meghan straightened her coat and Harry kept his eyes fixed on the pavement, the illusion cracked. The royal rebels, who once captivated the world, looked like guests who had overstayed their welcome in a story that no longer needed them. Inside Hollywood's inner circles, the whispers began almost instantly, not about what Meghan wore or who she spoke to, but about what wasn't said. The quiet avoidance, the deliberate distance. Guests described a strange tension in the room that trailed the couple like perfume. People weren't rude, one insider explained. They were careful. The way you treat someone radioactive. In Los Angeles, reputation spreads faster than scandal. The Kardashians, Bezos, and the other power brokers in attendance had built empires on controlling attention, and they recognized desperation when they saw it. Meghan's smile, perfectly timed and camera-ready, wasn't the charm of confidence. It was the performance of someone still fighting to prove they belonged. And in Hollywood, few things are less attractive than visible hunger. Kris Jenner, the woman who's turned every family dinner into a global headline, understood that instinctively. That's why when she posted her carousel of 20 glossy photos the next morning, not a single one included Meghan or Harry. The omission wasn't an oversight. It was a verdict. In the court of celebrity optics, being unseen is worse than being mocked. It means you've become irrelevant. Still, Meghan's team scrambled to reframe the narrative. Anonymous sources whispered to entertainment blogs that the Duchess had been the life of the party and that her attendance had honoured Kris's iconic milestone. But the internet wasn't buying it. Comment sections burned with sarcasm. Life of the party, or ghost of relevance, one user quipped. Even Kris edited them out, and she once gave Scott Disick a storyline. For a woman who's mastered the mechanics of media, the silence was catastrophic. Meghan had always been able to twist criticism into control, outrage into opportunity. But this time, the tone had changed. It wasn't scandal anymore. It was pity. And pity is the one thing fame can't survive. The fallout back in the UK was even more brutal. Newspapers plastered side-by-side images of Catherine bowing her head at the cenotaph and Meghan grinning under chandeliers. Duty versus disco, one tabloid blared. The contrast was cinematic, almost cruel. Veterans groups condemned Harry's absence, calling it a betrayal of comradeship. Even formerly sympathetic commentators struggled to find words soft enough to justify it. Harry's silence only deepened the wound. He issued no statement, no defense, no clarification, but he didn't need to. His expression at the party had already said everything. The half smile, the downward glance, the visible discomfort. They told a story of a man split between two worlds, belonging fully to neither. Meanwhile, Meghan did what she always does when the tide turns. She doubled down. In the days after the event, her team leaked reports of upcoming projects, philanthropic ventures, and possible new brand deals. Yet behind the PR curtain, something more fragile was unraveling. For the first time since stepping away from the royal family, Meghan's relationship with Hollywood power brokers was showing cracks. The Netflix magic had cooled, Spotify had walked away, and now even Kris Jenner, queen of calculated fame, seemed to be signaling distance. Behind closed doors, insiders whispered that Meghan had approached several major agencies in recent months, seeking new partnerships. But after a string of stalled projects and public fatigue, interest was lukewarm. "She's famous, yes," said one Hollywood PR consultant, "but not bankable." The difference is enormous. To understand how far the Sussexes had fallen, you only needed to watch the paparazzi footage from that night. The flashbulbs still fired, but fewer voices called out their names. When they climbed into their car, photographers turned away almost immediately, swiveling back toward Kim Kardashian's departing convoy. The hierarchy was clear. Meghan wasn't the headline anymore. She was the sideshow. But the deeper tragedy of that evening wasn't the bad optics or the media backlash. It was the unmistakable sense that Meghan and Harry were no longer a team. As one guest described, they weren't walking together, they were orbiting each other. Meghan moved through the crowd like a politician at a campaign gala, greeting strangers, laughing on cue. Harry lingered in the background, polite but detached, as if counting the minutes until he could escape. Their body language told the truth. Their statements never would. That whatever unity once bound them was now performance. Observers compared it to earlier footage of the couple during their royal tours. How Harry once looked proud, protective, and grounded, while Meghan shone beside him with the excitement of discovery. But in Beverly Hills, the energy had inverted. Meghan glowed with manic determination. Harry dimmed into the wallpaper. The next morning, as headlines exploded across both sides of the Atlantic, palace aides reportedly said nothing. Silence, after all, is the monarchy's oldest weapon. But within those marble halls, the message was understood. The Sussexes had once claimed to break away for freedom. What they'd found instead was exposure. Unfiltered, unprotected, and unending. And as the storm raged online, Meghan did what she always does when cornered. She turned it into content. her team began quietly feeding sympathetic outlets with stories of misinterpretation, painting the party as a private appearance blown out of proportion by the British press. It was a familiar strategy, reposition scandal as victimhood. Yet even this tactic was losing power. The world wasn't angry anymore. It was tired. Hollywood too was moving on. In an industry obsessed with novelty, even infamy has an expiration date. Meghan's name, once magnetic, had become background noise in a city that births new stars every hour. Her grand entrance at Kris Jenner's party, meant to reignite her brand, had backfired spectacularly. Instead of reclaiming the spotlight, she'd confirmed what many already suspected, that the glow was fading. As for Harry, his image suffered in quieter ways. Once the embodiment of rebellious integrity, he now appeared complicit in a performance he no longer believed in. Every photograph of him at that party became a metaphor. The decorated veteran turned unwilling extra in his own downfall. In private, those close to the couple described growing tension. Meghan, ever the strategist, viewed the backlash as temporary, a storm to be navigated through headlines and new projects. Harry, by contrast, saw it as something deeper, a fracture between purpose and pretense. The poppy pinned to his lapel had once symbolized duty. That night, it symbolized irony. Weeks later, as royal commentators continued dissecting the event, a strange detail emerged. Multiple guests confirmed that Meghan's attendance hadn't been directly sanctioned by Kris Jenner's team. It was arranged, instead, through a third-party connection, a publicist known for brokering access for influencers, not royalty. In other words, Meghan had gate-crashed Hollywood's highest table, and Hollywood noticed. From that moment, she wasn't seen as a duchess mingling among moguls. She was an outsider fighting to stay visible. The glittering facade had cracked, revealing the machinery beneath. The constant maneuvering, the relentless need to be seen, the exhaustion of maintaining relevance in a world that rewards only novelty. And that, perhaps, is the cruelest irony of all. Meghan had left the royal family to escape the confines of protocol, only to chain herself to the even harsher laws of fame. The palace demanded obedience. Hollywood demands performance. Both extract their pound of flesh, only in different currencies. By the end of the month, even the tabloids that once fed on her every move began to sound weary. Another misstep. One headline read, almost with pity, "The Duchess who mistook the spotlight for the throne." But the story doesn't end there, because behind Meghan's dazzling exterior, something else was unfolding. A quiet rebellion from within her own circle. Former aides, industry insiders, and one particular Hollywood contact were beginning to whisper truths that could upend her carefully built narrative. Stories about deals that fell through, about meetings where doors suddenly closed, about a phone call that Kris Jenner's team reportedly never returned. Meghan's Hollywood chapter wasn't closing with scandal. It was fading with silence. And in the world she once sought to rule, silence is the sound of exile. When the lights dimmed that night in Beverly Hills, Meghan may have thought she'd walked into a new era of celebrity. But by morning, it was clear. She'd walked into a mirror, one that reflected not the fame she chased, but the emptiness left behind. Because in the end, the true tragedy of Meghan Markle's Hollywood dream isn't that the cameras stopped flashing. It's that she no longer knows who she is when they do.